Hi, this is Stephanie Krupsak with the Purevant Living podcast, Women in Wellness. And today I have with me Beth Ridley, founder and owner of the Brimful Life, employee engagement and leadership expert, rooted in positive psychology and diversity and inclusion. She also started the Brimful Life podcast, featured in Biz Times Milwaukee, and is the frequent blogger for Thrive Global. Thanks so much for being here with me today, Beth.
Hi, Stephanie. Thank you very much for having me.
So let's get started right away. So how did we first meet? We'll talk about that.
Oh my gosh. You know, it's kind of funny. I feel like I've known you for a really long time, but I think it might be just weeks.
Yeah, it was
or maybe
recently.
just a couple of months. So we met through a mutual friend. And this individual thought that we would have a lot in common because you're all about wellness, healthy living, more from like a nutrition standpoint. And I'm about wellness, healthy living from a positive mindset standpoint. And the two very much go together. So I think after that initial meeting, we started brainstorming like all these ways. Like how can we like bring our expertise together to talk about holistic wellness in general?
Yeah, and we have a wellness workshop coming up next week.
Yes,
so that's
we do.
Great.
Yes, wellness for entrepreneurs who really need wellness because it's hard, as we know, being entrepreneurs. So making sure that you're investing in yourself in healthy ways to be able to keep going and not burn out.
Definitely. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Brimful Life?
Sure. So the Brimful Life, I call it a career and culture wellness company. So I really talk about just positivity in the workplace and how to foster and invest in a positive mental mindset at work for individual professionals, and as leaders, how to build positive, inspiring, inclusive cultures that really bring out the best in everybody. I was led to this work because I have like 25 years in pretty much corporate experience. I've worked in all sorts of different companies and sectors and industries, and I really see that, in my experience, people really struggle with achieving professional success, but not at the expense of personal well-being. And I personally suffered from, I think a lot of times I didn't feel truly joyful. I didn't feel true happiness or meaning through my work, even though I was professionally successful. And I just really started to think, gosh, there's got to be a better way. I'm going to be working for a long time. Like I really want to feel more of a sense of joy and meaning when I show up for work. And that led me down the path of researching about positive psychology because it became clear that there's a lot that happens at work that's out of my control. The only one thing in my control is how I choose to respond to certain situations and the mindset that I bring. And one's mindset is 100% in our control, as I learned from positive psychology. That's the good news. The unfortunate news is sometimes our mindset is the hardest thing to control. But I did start practicing some positive psychology practices in simple ways and noticed I was coming to work with a much more positive mindset overall, which led to just a lot more positivity in my career. I started incorporating positive psychology into my leadership, which led to creating a much more positive, joyful culture where people could really bring out their best. I just didn't see a whole lot of other leaders focusing on this. And so I thought, well, this is something I really, really believe in. I'm going to start a company that's really focused on really spreading the message around positive psychology, how we can bring a positive mindset to work, and simple solutions to be able to do that, either as a professional or as a leader.
And I know in talking earlier, you mentioned that positive psychology is something you have to do daily, or like you exercise, something you have to maintain to have that positive mindset. So that's something that you, in your consulting, encourage people to do daily?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think if you want to have a positive mindset, you do have to practice it. I think the mind, you could think of it as any other muscle in your body, right? So I like to say if you want to have toned arms, you have to go to the gym more often than not. If you want to have a positive mindset, you really have to be investing in practicing that. And so when I work with leaders in terms of like, how do you build a positive culture, it starts with the mindset, the attitude, the values that the leader has and how they bring those to work. And my consulting is really about how does the leader manifest these positive aspects on a daily basis. And you don't need to have a huge strategic plan. You don't have to spend a lot of money on consultants. It's really about the little things that you do and taking advantage of, I call them the micro moments, little interactions that you have with individuals at work on a daily basis. Are you being intentional about how you're using that time to lead in a more positive way versus a neutral or a negative way?
And in the corporate world, for example, is this something that you would train leaders within the company to like pass on to employees and practice daily?
Yeah, and I would say maybe not even train, but it's almost like, again, so much of the culture stems from the attitude and the mindset of the leader. Mm-hmm. So it's really like working with the leader and saying, all right, so what are the values that you want to come across at work? Maybe it's like, I want to create an environment where people can fail fast and take risks and not be afraid to try. And, if things don't work out perfectly, there's resilience and you're learning from mistakes. Well, that's a really important value. Now let's talk about how does that value actually get expressed by you so it can be felt. And it's not a value that you talk about and then it's not felt by the employees, because that creates a disconnect, right? Employees then start to feel like you're disingenuous. You say these things, but you don't really mean these things. So then we just work on, all right, through your daily interactions with the people on your team, through emails, through your one-on-ones, through team meetings and other shared experiences at work, how do you bring those values to light? And in most cases, they're just very simple ways. Again, with the example, if a leader says, I really want to foster a culture that respects trying and failing and learning from mistakes, well, how are you communicating about things that didn't go as well for you as expected? Maybe you should be doing a short email once a week about that. Maybe in your team meetings, you should carve out 5 minutes to go around the table and ask everybody, hey, what didn't go quite well as expected this week, but what did you learn from it? That type of thing. That's how you bring the values, these positive values, to life at work, so they're not just platitudes that you talk about or strategies that live in PowerPoint.
And I know with a lot of times to keep that positive mindset, it's something we all know. We need to, have that mindset and kind of shift it that way. Yeah. But it's almost like it's our intuition that we need to naturally live by. But this is kind of like a reminder. So in your business, you're helping people remember that daily.
Yes.
It's your intuition that is telling you this, but then you're the expert kind of reminding them.
It's funny, and it's kind of like eating vegetables. We know we should, or for me, I'll say for me, it's drinking water. I know I must drink more water. I know it. Mm-hmm. There's no excuse to not drink more water. It's always available, but I don't drink more water. So I think the same thing with some of these principles from positive psychology. They're not hard. I really boil them down to 5. So if you want to have a more positive mindset, if you want to be more resilient and overcome burnout, you should be focusing on being mindful, present in the moment, practicing gratitude, appreciation for the things you should be thankful for, expressing appreciation to others, focusing more on experiences and relationships, the material things, and leveraging your strengths. These are not hard things, not rocket science things, but we really do struggle incorporating them in our lives, especially since we're so busy and so overscheduled. My mission is to not make these extra things that you have to do, but how do you embrace them in ways that are natural, fun, contagious? You can involve other people. So I have a lot of products that do that. And then I do a lot of speaking engagements on this, really to inspire people to think about simple solutions that can have a tremendously big positive impact on your life.
And I know one of the tools you have are your card decks.
Yeah.
That are good daily reminders. Do you want to talk more about those?
Yes. So I came out with 3 card decks that basically give you suggestions on things that you can do to boost your positive mindset at least once a week as a way to try to make these practices more habit. So one of the practices that I talk about a lot through my speaking engagements is investing in experiences. So for me, investing in experiences is a great way to challenge yourself, push yourself outside of your comfort zone, learn and grow, have fun facing fears. And I actually give this talk where I did a challenge for myself of doing one new thing a week for an entire year. And it was a great way for me to build confidence, resilience, and I showed up for work a much more pleasant, confident professional. And so I give a lot of talks about that. And somebody said, well, you know, if you want to make it easy for the rest of us to do one new thing a week for a year in order to have a growth mindset, why wouldn't that be a card deck? That's 52 things. And I said, that's a great idea. So I made a card deck. So try one new thing a week. 52 suggestions in the card. So shuffle the deck, choose one thing a week to do, or use what's on the card to inspire your own thoughts. You can do it by yourself or with friends or coworkers. So that's one product. Similarly, another one is another card deck with the title, Transform Your Mindset 1 Week at a Time through Gratitude and Reflection. And that really gets to incorporating the practice of mindfulness, being present in the moment, and gratitude on a regular basis. So again, 52 different ideas on how to do that you can do by yourself or with family and coworkers. And the last one is about building relationships and investing in relationships at work. And that card deck is 52 better ways to ask, how are you? And I think that one's really important because when we talk about building relationships at work, again, take advantage of these micro moments. How often are you passing someone in the hallway? Oh, hey, Stephanie, how are you? And, you know, I don't really care at that moment. And you probably lie about your answer. I'm good. I'm busy. But what if you had 52 better ways? If I'm going to ask you something about you, why not ask a better question? Like, what are you excited about this week, Stephanie? And then I learned something actually about you that helps to, you know, strengthen our relationship. And it took all but 30 seconds. So again, those are examples of just like easy ways I'm trying to think of to make practicing these happy habits, as I call them, these positive psychology practices, fun and easy.
I love that. I need all 3 card decks, by the way.
Well, I'll give you a gift set just in time for the holidays.
Oh, perfect. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I really love the how are you question because at a couple events recently for entrepreneurs, that actually came up. People ask that question, but do they really care?
Yeah.
How are you? Because the standard question is, oh, I'm good. I'm okay. Because I was talking to another group of friends too from Czech Republic actually, and they said that when you ask how are you in Czech, that is like a 2-hour conversation.
Oh.
It's not like the basic simple answer we'd say here, which I thought was very interesting.
That is really interesting.
But again, that's probing deeper and finding out a fact about that person. So I think that's an excellent idea.
Yeah, and I think so. And I don't know, maybe it's our own American culture. And again, this focus on being busy. Nowadays, when you say, how are you? Oh, busy, right? Which is another problem, right?
Yes.
So not only are we really not establishing a relationship because we simply ask, how are you? And we want to move on. But the fact that we're all so overscheduled and all so busy, we are not being mindful. We are not being present in the moment. Life is passing by. Like, joy happens in the small moments in life. And if we're so busy, you know, we're focusing on execution. We're not, you know, replenishing ourselves and we get burned out. So being busy is another problem too.
Exactly. Yeah. And then building those relationships, those personal, those business relationships where you're asking, how are you really doing?
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's great to probe for questions like that.
Yeah.
And for your first card deck, you mentioned trying something new each week.
Do
you have a little insight to that you could share of what one of those tips are?
Ooh, yeah. So when I did it for myself, like I really pushed myself to do like interesting, crazy things. I joined a band. I joined a speed skating league. The card deck is not quite like that. The card deck is a little bit more like, it doesn't matter who you are, your physical ability, or where you live in the country or the city. These are things that you could easily do. So for example, maybe go grocery shopping at an ethnic food store and purchase one food item that you've never tried before.
That's
you know?
really cool.
Yeah, simple things like that. Take a different mode of transportation to work. If you're always driving, could you maybe take the bus, maybe take the train, maybe ride a bicycle or a scooter?
All over Milwaukee.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So they're very actually doable things.
Yeah,
Most of them are things that probably you have not done before, but definitely you could do.
Or take a different route to work. You take the same street.
Exactly.
The next street, explore your
That's
city.
exactly right.
I really like that.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's great. And also, I know you started a podcast as well. Do you want to talk more about that?
Yes. So I started a podcast again because I really wanted to explore how are people finding joy and meaning through their profession. And so season 1 of the podcast was all about interviewing individuals who have maybe taken bolder creative steps to find real true happiness and doing something that they love for a living. What I found out in season 1 is that a lot of times people, when they're not happy at work, it's really because, quite frankly, they never really define success on their own terms, or they're living somebody else's expectations of what they should do with their life. A common example is I happen to meet a lot of doctors and attorneys who became doctors and attorneys to make their parents proud, but they don't love the profession. And so later in life, they have to make dramatic changes in order to wake up in the morning and feel excited by what they do for a living. So season 1 was all about that. Season 2, which I just kicked off, that I'm doing in partnership with Biz Times Media, is now interviewing leaders, because as much as individuals have the accountability for bringing a positive mindset to work, leaders have the accountability for creating cultures where other people can thrive. So I've been interviewing leaders of companies that are doing really well from a business standpoint, but they're doing well because they're investing in their people, they're investing in their cultures, and hearing the strategies that they use and their experience and why people and culture and positivity is important to them.
Very great. So what are some of the other initiatives that you're currently working on?
Well, one that I'm really excited about is, again, I talked about I do speaking, I do consulting with companies around how to really bring out the best in people and create the best cultures and environments. But through the work with companies and also my own corporate experience, I really do see that adults in the workplace struggle with anxiety. They struggle with maintaining a positive outlook. And that's really caused me to think about, well, as a parent of teenagers, what am I doing to better prepare my own kids to be positive adults? And I see, even at a very young age, I'm getting a ton of information from the high school about warning signs of stress and anxiety among kids. So I don't think as a society we're doing a good job of instilling these happy habits in our children so they can grow up with a positive outlook, a positive mindset. So one of the things I'm really excited about is how do I bring the products that I talked about into children and create things that parents can do with kids that really foster a positive mindset. So one of them is a kidpreneur kit that I'm coming up with, because I think it's important for kids, no matter what profession they go into, to have that entrepreneurial spirit, right? So a creative mind, always thinking about how you could do something better, and resiliency, right? A lot of companies struggle to cultivate those competencies in their employees. So I want parents to be able to work with their kids with a fun kit that I'm putting together. And how do you come up with like a business idea that you can do with your kids? Whether it's a business that paints rocks and they sell them, there's a bazillion things that you can do. But I've done this with my kids. So I just sort of like packaged the process in a fun kit that parents can use with their kids at home to start to develop those positive mindsets around entrepreneurship. And so that's one of the things I'm working on that I'm excited about.
That's very cool. Mm-hmm. What type of business did you develop with your kids in the
process?
process?
Yeah. So my very first product, my kids created the book that I sell on my website called 365 Ways to Ask How Was Your Day? Questions that don't suck to get kids talking. Because the problem that I have with my kids, and I think this is kind of a universal problem, the kids would come home from school, hey, how was your day? Good, fine, I don't remember. And I told them, you guys are killing me here. Like, I hate your answers to my question. And they said to me, well, Mom, we hate your question. You're going to ask a boring question. How was your day? We're just going to give you a boring answer.
That's fair.
Yeah, fair, right? Fair. And so I said, well, what would be better questions that you would want to answer? And they came up with like 5. And I said, these are actually really fun. This would engage us in a conversation and advance our relationship, because I have little time with my kids since I'm working. And so they came up with 365 of them, one for each day of the year. And that was the first step. And I said, you know what, if you guys write the questions, I'll figure out how to publish the book. which I did. And then I want you guys to sell them. I want you to build the confidence to look an adult in the eye, talk about the book, why you created it. And quite frankly, all three of my kids are on the shyer end of the spectrum. So this was a challenge for them. But we would go to craft fairs, holiday fairs, and we would sit with our books. And I would say, you need to approach people. And the first time they did it, they were looking down. They were really shy. You know, by the end of the day, they were proactively reaching out to people. I'll never forget my son, who was 8 at the time. We were doing the Pfister Holiday Fair, and Fox News came by. The cameraman walked right past our table, didn't stop. And my 8-year-old said, "Excuse me, cameraman, you didn't stop, and I have a book to talk about." And he got him on the news. And this was, you know, a shy little kid gained the confidence to tell his story to an adult. And I always said, that's the time when you want to, like, have kids try these things, take some risks, go outside of their comfort zone, because quite frankly, they should leverage their cuteness while they have it, right? And I always said, like a lemonade stand, like, nobody's really stopping to buy your lemonade.
Exactly.
They're stopping to support the youth of America. And the same thing with the books that my kids created, like, sell them while you're cute, because people want to support children. And it's a great way to sort of take a risk and learn a new skill while you're young. So you build that confidence and you build that resiliency, that creativity as an adult. So
I love that.
Yeah, thanks.
You maybe even turn into a Shark Tank thing.
Oh, maybe. We're obsessed with Shark Tank. That's sort of where the
show.
idea came from, because
Okay.
we'll watch it and be like, why didn't we think of that? Or, oh my goodness, Mr. Wonderful, he's so mean. And yeah.
That's really great. I love that. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about your Facebook Live series?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that. So, so what I wanted to do is basically take the concept of the positive psychology principles, the 5 that I talked about. I call them happy habits. So mindfulness, practicing gratitude, investing in experiences and relationships, and leveraging your strengths. And sort of break them down during people's lunch breaks. So like from 12:15 to 12:45, they can tune in from their desks. And in a 3-week series, Wednesdays, I'm just going to talk about each one and talk about why it's important in terms of fostering a positive mindset, and some simple strategies that you can do to incorporate these practices into your daily life and into your work life. And so, you know, I've experimented with doing workshops after work. And again, I think because people are like so busy, it's hard to get away and to squeeze in the time. And again, I'm all about not making it something extra to do. But if you're sitting at your desk, you're eating lunch anyway, you have a break, you have only 30 minutes, you know, let's fill that 30 minutes with some positive tips and best practices and some suggestions, and sort of like a power positive, 30 minutes during lunch. And so that's the intention. I start on November 6th and it goes to November 13th and November 20th. So every Wednesday for the rest of November from 12:15 to 12:45.
Great. Everybody will have to tune in. We'll have a link to that after too.
Oh, cool. Thank
to
you.
Find that.
Yeah, thanks.
So looking at all that you've accomplished and done so far, is there a specific event or experience in your personal journey that kind of led you to do what you do today?
Yeah, so the personal experience that really got me thinking about this and really led me down the path of positive psychology was in my corporate life. One of the hardest things that I had to do was work through reorganizations that led to job eliminations. So I had the unfortunate role of being that person to let people know that your job has been eliminated, you have to exit the company. And that was really hard for me. Obviously, it was really hard for the person who was receiving that information. But I started to notice I was getting 2 different reactions. From most people, reacted very negatively, as I would. They were mad at me, the leader, the messenger. They were mad at the company for putting us in this situation, and they're really disappointed with themselves. And it came out in terms of either anger or sadness, but negative emotions. I also noticed that there were like 1 or 2 people who, in the face of what arguably could be some of the worst news, that they would hear that year, if not their lifetime, for whatever reason, they had the ability to say, gosh, this is not what I was expecting. I've so much enjoyed my time at the company, but I'm looking forward to what's next. And how are you doing, Beth? And I couldn't believe it. And I said, it's the same situation, but I'm getting 2 different reactions. And the only difference between the negative reaction and the positive reaction is mindset, how the person chooses to receive and react in the situation. And that led me down to the path of like, whatever those positive people are doing, I want to know how they can be positive in a bad situation. And I want more of that. And I just started Googling, how can you be more positive? And that led me down to positive psychology. So that was really the beginning of it. I would say that was maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. And the more I started studying it and then actually incorporating these practices into my own life and then incorporating them into work, it makes a difference. And there's science that backs this up. So it's almost like too good to be true. What? Simple things that you can do for free, and it makes me a more positive, resilient person. I avoid stress and burnout. I can't even believe it's true. But it does work if you work on it, if you invest in it. And so because I saw the benefits that, companies could legitimately transform their cultures without having to spend a lot of money at all, if leaders were just a little bit more intentional about these things, that's what led me really to start the Brimful Life, because I didn't see enough leaders that were caring about this topic. And I thought I'd like to work with leaders to kind of like help leaders be the best leaders that they can be, so their companies can be the best companies that they can be.
I know you've somewhat answered this question already, but what are some of your short-term and long-term goals to benefit women in wellness?
Oh, yeah. So some of my short-term goals is really to find more platforms where I can talk to and work with women. So, for example, thank you so much for having me on your podcast and the focus on women. And the reason why I like to focus on women, I guess a couple of things. I'm a woman. And so, I like that. And also, I think women have a little bit more of a natural disposition to focus on self-care. And I think the role that women play in the workforce and in the home, everything stems from a woman leader, leader in the workplace or in the home who is positive. So I think there's so many, dividends by working with women for society. So that's one reason. And so I want to find more opportunities where I can maybe address women specifically at women leader workshops and conferences and women-focused podcasts. And then in the long term, I really want to be able to reach everybody, and I really want to be able to work in more companies on a consulting or an advisory basis. And the reason why I'm really passionate about this is I think in order for companies to be competitive today and in the future, they're going to have to put more of a premium on culture, right? So it's a very tight labor market, and we know how hard it is to attract and retain top talent. Employees have more choice of where they work than ever. Young employees are often choosing not to work in a traditional corporation. So I think if companies really want to get a return on their investment in terms of their talent, they're going to have to create cultures that are inspiring and inclusive and bring out the best in everyone as the differentiator. And that's really what I'm trying to tease out with the podcast, interviewing CEOs and leaders who get that and show that it's more than just a nice to do. It is critical for business, not just in terms of business success and the outcomes, but in terms of bringing out the best in your employees and attracting and retaining top talent, because I think it's just going to get harder and harder to do that. And I really believe that culture will be the differentiator.
I agree with that, because a lot of people are concerned more about their health, and they're more willing to work for a company that has this great atmosphere versus just going off of salary. So I think that's super important.
Yeah, I agree.
So what does wellness mean to you?
So wellness means to me that I feel like I'm thriving in all the aspects of my life that I really care about. And so I think for me, it is both growing my own business, investing in my family, both my husband and my children and my, siblings and parents, and my friends, and engaging in the community. So, I feel like I think it's hard to be investing in all of those aspects equally all the time. So it does sort of ebb and flow. But wellness for me means I don't feel this nagging feeling like anything is lacking in any regard significantly. So it's trying to sort of like create the right balance between all the buckets that are important to me.
Definitely makes sense. And what is one wellness ritual that you do daily or weekly that you encourage listeners to incorporate into their lives?
So this is a new one that I started to do. So out of all the happy habits that I talked about, the one that I struggle with is mindfulness and just carving out time to pause and reflect. I do like to be on the go, and so it's hard for me to incorporate that one. I struggled with that one. So I decided instead of trying to carve out 20 minutes at a time to reflect and to meditate or anything like that, I started doing it in shorter increments, and I looked for the natural transition points throughout the day. So for example, when I'm driving and when I park, before I get out of the car, I will take 1 minute to just collect my thoughts, maybe reflect on my intention of what I want to do when I get out of the car, or sometimes just sort of like do nothing. So I started creating that as a habit at normal transition points, and I've been experimenting with when I park the car because I'm kind of zipping around town all the time. So when I park the car before I get out to go grocery shopping, when I park the car to drop off the kids, when I park the car to pick up the kids, when I park the car to go to the meeting, I feel like I'm always parking my car. So I use that as sort of a good reminder just before I get out of the car. Just before, almost as natural as I turn off the motor, I unplug my seatbelt. Before I get out, pause for a minute. And then I get my mindfulness in. And, you know, at the end of the day, it could add up to 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But that's something that I've been trying to do. Use the natural transitions of the day to be a prompt to focus on one of these happy habits.
I really like that. That's great. It's almost like a short bit of meditation.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's really great.
Exactly.
Are there any special like apps or books you'd recommend or things like that you really like to use?
I do use guided meditation apps. The one that's on my phone now is called Meditation.
Oh, okay.
And I like that because it has different guided meditations for all different purposes. There's one if you want to relax your mind to sleep better. There's one if you want to build more confidence. There's one if you want to focus on gratitude and developing empathy. And you can sort them all by how much time you have. So if you only have 2 minutes, there's some short ones based on the outcome that you want to achieve. Or if you have longer time, you know, I think they're up to an hour. So I do like that flexibility of, you know, wherever and whenever I can find some time, there's a good guided meditation. So I've been using that one recently.
Oh, I really like that. So now for the fun question.
Yeah.
So what is your personal mantra or theme song that gets you into a good state of mind to start your day, or you use to redirect your mind to that good state?
Okay. So the mantra that I use is today is the worst that you'll ever be. And I got that from a friend of mine who is really instrumental, Richie Burke, I'll say his name, who was really instrumental with me starting my business. And I would check in with him every now and then. And the last time I checked in with him, he's like, how's the business going? I was like, I don't know. It's got its ups and downs. Today I'm just not feeling so red hot. And he said, Beth, but today's the worst it'll ever be because today's the worst you'll ever be. Every day you get better. And I was like, well, you know what, Richie?
I like that.
All of a sudden I actually feel better. If I can survive today and it'll never be this bad again, yeah. Okay. So that's my mantra. I go to that a lot. It's a good pick me up.
Yeah. Kind of like shift your mind and be like, okay, it's only going to get
Exactly.
better.
Yeah,
like
exactly. Exactly.
So how can reader or listeners reach you?
Yep. So probably the best way is through my website, thebrimfullife.com. And that's where you can get access to everything that I've talked about. So the podcast, the blogs, the products. You can book me for speaking. You can hire me as a consultant. And so you can also subscribe to my newsletter. So once a month, I share sort of what is new that I'm doing in this space, my own tips, and my own suggestions in terms of how to boost that positive mindset.
That's great. I'm definitely going to subscribe to all of them.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank you.
check out those cards.
Thank you. Thank you.
So thank you again so much for coming here today and sharing your story and some tips for listeners. So thanks everybody for following along, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Stephanie.
When I look into your eyes, I feel so